Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive.
Oh, this will be fun.
It really will.
Yeah.
We are tackling philosophy today.
Ooh,
Heady stuff.
I like it.
Yeah,
It's good.
we're going to use this document as our guide. It's
Yeah.
called How to Think Philosophy.
Right. And the goal here isn't to, you know.
Turn everyone into Socrates.
Yeah, exactly. No instant philosophers here.
Right.
But to give you some really practical tools from this document,
Okay.
think of it like
Like a mental toolkit?
there you go, a mental toolkit for thinking more critically.
I love that.
Yeah.
A mental toolkit.
Maybe even uncovering, some deeper meaning in your everyday life.
Okay, so before we grab those tools, though, I got to ask. I've always been a bit intimidated by philosophy.
Sure.
What is a good, clear definition?
Well, it's a great question.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely a field that can seem, well, a bit abstract.
Right.
This document really hones in on a key point.
Okay.
Philosophy is all about those deeper truths that science can't quite answer. It uses logic like a detective to figure out those big concepts like justice and knowledge and, yes, even the meaning of life.
So it's like science tells us the mechanics of how the world works, but philosophy helps us grapple with those bigger why questions.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that in philosophy, there isn't always one right answer.
Okay.
It's about the journey of asking those tough questions, refining how we think,
Yeah.
and being open to new perspectives as we learn and grow.
Okay, so maybe it's not about having all the answers, but having a solid process for thinking things through.
Right.
So this document talks a lot about logical reasoning.
Right.
Why is that so essential in philosophy?
So think of logic as the foundation of any good argument.
Okay.
It's like building a house. You need a strong base to make sure it doesn't crumble.
Right.
Logic helps us ensure that our ideas are clear, well-supported, and able to withstand scrutiny.
Yeah.
It's not about winning a debate, but about making sure our reasoning is sound.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes I rely on gut feelings. Is there ever a time when intuition trumps logic? Or are we always supposed to be super rational?
Well, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Intuition definitely have its place,
Okay.
but philosophy encourages us to examine those gut feelings critically.
Okay.
Sometimes our intuition can be spot on.
Right.
Other times it can lead us astray.
Sure.
This document highlights the importance of understanding common logical fallacies.
Oh, yeah.
Those sneaky errors in reasoning that can trip us up.
Oh, I've definitely fallen for a few of those.
Can
Can
you
you give us an example?
Sure, let's say you're reading a news article and someone in the comments completely dismisses the author's argument by saying something like, well, that author went to that university, so obviously they can't be trusted.
Oh, right.
That's a classic ad hominem attack where they attack the person instead of addressing the argument itself.
Right.
Recognizing these fallacies can be such a valuable skill for navigating all the information out there, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Now I'm thinking about all the times I've probably been fooled by faulty logic without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how to think, but what about the big questions philosophy tackles?
Sure.
This document dives into ethics, which feels particularly relevant to how we live our lives.
Yeah, ethics is all about figuring out right from wrong, especially when things get complicated.
Right.
And it's not always black and white. It
Yeah.
often involves navigating gray areas
Sure.
where different values might clash.
Yeah.
Philosophy gives us frameworks to make sense of those messy situations.
So it's less about having a set of rules and more about developing the tools to approach ethical dilemmas thoughtfully.
Yes, and this document makes a great point about how emotional intelligence plays a crucial role in ethical reasoning.
Oh.
It's not just about cold, hard logic, but also about understanding different perspectives, empathizing with others, and considering the emotional impact of our actions. For example, this document talks about how learning about systemic inequalities might completely change our understanding of what it means to be fair.
Wow, that's a really powerful point. It's like our ethical frameworks can evolve as we learn and grow. My own sense of what's right and wrong has definitely shifted over time.
That's the beauty of it. Ethical understanding is a journey, not a destination. We're constantly being challenged to reevaluate our beliefs and assumptions.
Okay, we've covered how to think logically and make ethical choices.
All right.
But how do we know if the information we're basing those choices on is even accurate in the first place?
Good question.
This is where epistemology comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's a word I've always found a bit intimidating.
Don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay.
Essentially, epistemology is all about examining how we know what we know. It's about being curious, questioning assumptions, and not just taking things at face value.
So in a world of fake news and information overload, Epistemology helps us become more discerning consumers of information.
Absolutely.
That feels incredibly relevant right now.
It encourages us to ask, what's the source of this information?
Mm.
What are their biases? What evidence supports their claims?
Yeah.
This document gives a great example. Imagine a friend tells you this new health supplement cured their ailment.
Right.
Epistemology would encourage you to dig deeper.
Yeah.
What's the evidence for that? Is it just their personal experience, or is there scientific research to back it up?
That's such a good point. I know I've definitely been guilty of taking things at face value without really questioning the source. I think this concept could be a game changer for how I evaluate information in the future.
And that's precisely why philosophy is so valuable.
Mm.
It provides us with tools to navigate an increasingly complex world.
Okay.
It encourages us not just to think, but to think well.
Well said. Now I think it's time to tackle the big one, the meaning of life.
Oh, here we go.
It's a question I've pondered for years.
The ultimate question.
Does philosophy offer any answers?
You know, the meaning of life is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that philosophy doesn't pretend to have a single definitive answer. Instead, it gives us frameworks for exploring that question in a way that's personally meaningful.
I like that. A framework for exploration. So it's not about finding the answer,
Right.
but developing a deeper understanding of what gives our lives meaning.
Exactly. And the meaning we find can evolve over time.
Okay.
What seemed profound in our 20s might take on a different significance later in life as we gain new experiences and perspectives.
Sure.
The document emphasizes this idea of an evolving understanding of meaning.
What are your thoughts on that? You know, that really resonates with me. What I valued in my 20s is drastically different from what I prioritize now.
I hear that.
It makes me wonder, for you listening, has your idea of what gives life meaning changed over time?
Good question.
What did you prioritize 10 years ago, and what
Yeah.
matters most to you now? It's a fascinating question to ponder.
It really is, and it connects to the idea that philosophy isn't just about abstract concepts,
Yeah.
but about how we live our lives.
Right.
Even seemingly mundane choices, the work we do, the relationships we nurture,
Yeah.
can be viewed through this lens of meaning and purpose.
That's such a powerful point.
Yeah.
It's like we're saying that philosophy can infuse our everyday lives with deeper meaning and intention.
Precisely. It helps us connect the dots between our thoughts, actions, and values.
This has been such a great foundation for understanding the basics of philosophy before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Can you remind us of the 6 core principles of thought that this document highlights?
Okay.
I think they really encapsulate what we've been talking about.
Absolutely. They are critical thinking, skepticism, ethical reasoning, openness, self-awareness, and emotional intelligence.
Wow.
They represent the mental toolkit philosophy gives us for navigating life's complexities.
I love how they encompass both intellectual and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that we don't have to become philosophy scholars to benefit from these concepts. Remember when we talked about earlier, it's about focusing on the foundational principles that can have the biggest impact on our thinking and living that Pareto principle in action.
Exactly. Just like with any skill mastering, the fundamentals can make a world of difference.
So to bring this all together, could you give us a real-world example of how science and philosophy work together?
I think the document mentions the synergy as being crucial.
Great question.
Mhm.
Let's take genetic editing. Science provides us with the incredible tools to manipulate DNA. But philosophy asks those bigger questions. Should we be altering human traits in this way? What are the ethical implications?
Yeah.
It's like science gives us the how, while philosophy guides the should.
That's a perfect example. It really highlights how science and philosophy complement each other,
Right.
helping us not just understand the world, but also navigate its complexities with wisdom and care.
I completely agree. It's a powerful partnership.
This has been such an eye-opening start to our deep dive into philosophy. I'm already feeling like I have some new tools to apply to my own thinking. We'll be right back with more insights from this document in just a moment.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion so far. It seems like these philosophical concepts are already sparking some reflection for you.
Definitely. It's amazing how even just dipping our toes into these ideas can shift perspectives. And speaking of perspective shifts,
Right.
this document's closing reflection really got me thinking, now that we have these philosophical tools,
Yeah.
what aspects of our own lives might we see differently?
That's such a powerful question to consider. It could be anything from how we approach a personal dilemma to how we understand current events,
Yeah.
or even just how we interact with others on a daily basis.
It's almost like we're putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
I know for me, thinking about ethical frameworks has me reevaluating some decisions I've made recently.
Hmm.
It's making me wonder if I could have approached things with more empathy or considered different perspectives more thoughtfully.
That's a great example of how philosophy can be applied in a practical way. It's not just about abstract theories, but about using these tools to navigate the real world with more awareness and intention.
I'm also finding myself questioning assumptions more before this deep dive. I might have taken certain information at face value without really considering the source or the potential biases involved. Now I'm much more aware of the need to think critically and evaluate information carefully, especially in today's information-saturated world.
That's a crucial takeaway. It's like we're equipping ourselves with the mental armor to protect ourselves from misinformation and manipulation.
Exactly, and beyond just protecting ourselves.
Hmm.
I think these philosophical tools can also empower us to be more engaged citizens, more thoughtful decision makers, and even more compassionate human beings.
I couldn't agree more. It's about recognizing that philosophy isn't just an academic pursuit. It's a way of life, a way of approaching the world with curiosity, critical thinking, and a commitment to ethical living.
Beautifully said. It's like we're constantly refining our internal compasses, using these philosophical principles to guide us towards a more meaningful and fulfilling life. And one of the most beautiful things about philosophy is that it's a journey, not a destination. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to question.
That's so true. It's a lifelong pursuit, a process of continually expanding our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And this document emphasizes that beautifully. It encourages us to embrace this ongoing journey of learning, growth, and philosophical exploration.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it makes me think about the concept of lifelong learning. We often think of education as something that ends after we graduate, but philosophy invites us to be lifelong students constantly engaging with new ideas and perspectives.
I love that it's about fostering that intellectual curiosity, that thirst for knowledge that keeps our minds sharp and our spirits engaged. And it doesn't require enrolling in a formal program. We can cultivate this mindset by reading books, engaging in thoughtful conversations, and simply being open to learning from our experiences.
It's such a good reminder. It's
Here.
like we're saying that philosophy can be integrated into our daily lives in so many ways, and it doesn't have to be intimidating or overwhelming. We can start by focusing on those core principles, those foundational tools that can make a real difference in how we think and live.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's about taking those small steps, those incremental changes that can lead to profound shifts in our perspectives and our lives.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to encourage you listening to think about how you can incorporate some of these philosophical tools into your own life. What small changes can you make to become a more critical thinker, a more ethical decision maker, or a more discerning consumer of information?
It's an invitation to embrace the power of philosophy, to transform not just our minds, but our lives.
This has been such an incredible exploration so far. We'll be back in just a moment to wrap up our deep dive into philosophy with some final reflections and key takeaways.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive into philosophy. I feel like we've covered so much ground,
We have.
but I'm also realizing how much more there is to explore.
It really is just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to what we talked about at the very beginning, this idea of philosophy providing us with a mental toolkit.
Yeah.
What are some of the most valuable tools we've unpacked today that our listeners can start using right away?
Well, I think one of the most powerful tools is simply the awareness that there are different ways of thinking, different frameworks for approaching problems and making decisions.
Okay.
Just recognizing that can be a game changer.
Absolutely. It's like we've been given permission to question assumptions, to challenge conventional wisdom, and to think for ourselves.
Exactly. And along with that comes the importance of logical reasoning, being able to construct sound arguments, identify fallacies, and evaluate information critically are essential skills in today's world.
It's like we're building mental muscles, training ourselves to think more clearly and effectively.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the importance of ethical reasoning.
Right.
This document really emphasizes that ethics isn't just about following rules,
Right.
but about developing the capacity for empathy, understanding different perspectives, and making choices that align with our values.
It's about becoming more conscious and compassionate individuals, both in our personal lives and how we engage with the world around us.
I love that. And I think another key takeaway is that philosophy isn't just for academics or intellectuals. It's for everyone.
Yeah.
It's about those fundamental questions we all grapple with. the meaning of life,
Right, yeah.
the nature of reality, what it means to live a good life.
Those are questions that have resonated with humans for centuries,
For sure.
and they continue to be relevant today no matter our background or beliefs.
Absolutely. And this document provides such a great starting point for exploring those questions.
Yes.
It gives us
Pretty
the
good.
tools to think critically, reason logically, and make ethical choices.
As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. This deep dive has been all about equipping you with some key philosophical concepts, but the real magic happens when you start applying those concepts to your own life. So I encourage you to take some time to reflect on what we've discussed today. What resonated with you most? What new insights did you gain? And most importantly, how can you use these philosophical tools to navigate the world with more clarity, purpose, and meaning?
It's been such a pleasure diving into these ideas with you. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep the philosophical conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into philosophy. We hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to continue your own philosophical journey. Until next time, keep thinking deeply,